already.
No.
You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible. Who you do business with is more important than where they're located. Bank from the comfort of your own home with Emprise Bank. Coming up, the latest episode of the KC Laboratory Podcast with Ken Swanson, Craig Stout, and Matt Lane. Coming to you on the fastest growing sports media network in Kansas City. You can find all of our channels covering all the local teams wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube. Just search KCSN. And now, the latest episode of the KC Laboratory.
It's a live playoff edition game preview of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC. I am beyond excited to be getting into this divisional round game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Matthew Lane, hi, hello, how are you? Happy playoffs.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Y'all, the rest of you fan bases have already been in playoff mode. We just got here. We've been out here chilling. We've been hanging out. We've been playing Call of Duty. We've been looking at draft prospects. We're just hanging out, waiting for the playoffs to start. They're finally here. I could not be more excited. And I'd like to think Jacksonville Jaguars fans, whatever you want to call yourself, Pumas, whatever you want to be, I would like to thank you guys for the fake confidence you guys have brought to social media this week, because this has felt like a very ho-hum game. And all of a sudden, all these Jaguars fans are all kinds of antsy to talk trash right now. So it's been a lot of fun. It's gotten the blood flowing a little bit more for a matchup that, again, really felt kind of ho-hum up until that point.
I mean, Trevor Lawrence started it. He came out and he said, stadium's not going to be that loud. I mean, you look at the list of the way that Jacksonville was this weekend. Hey, man, good job. Pump up your own fan base. I'm on board with it and everything like that. But yeah, it's a little bit different in Arrowhead. He's asking for the smoke from Arrowhead's crowd. So if you are listening to this and you're going to be in the game, you know what to do. Make it loud. Interrupt that a little bit. Make it fun.
Brent Shepard with the comment already. Craig dressing up for playoff divisional round. The man is wearing a KC Sports Network polo. He is all business for the first round of the playoffs. You can just the energy is palpable. He is locked in. He is focused. It's a business trip today for the next hour, or if Matty Lane had his way, 3 hours of game preview for Chiefs.
If there was ever a time to go that long, it would be a playoff game, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. They'll probably get a little bit longer.
Y'all heard it.
Nope.
Ken agreed. Ken agreed. 3 hour show happening tonight,
awesome.
right now.
I've been waiting to do a Matty 20.
Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're watching. We appreciate everybody hanging out. We've got 18 different shows on KC Sports Network covering the Chiefs every single week. So this is your place to come get a lot of different perspectives. You hear from former Chiefs like Jeff Allen, Mike DeVito. You hear from a guy named Derek Johnson. He's all right. It's like Craig's best friend now. You get all kinds of different perspectives from a bunch of different people. And we got 18 shows. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a 5-star review too. Wouldn't hurt. It helps grow the iTunes channel as well. So, and also, by the way, if you're on 435 this week and you're heading to Arrowhead, check out the KC Sports Network billboard off of 435 at Raytown Road. I drove by it today because that's on my way to work. I drove by it. It was really cool to see. So you might see that. We did try to get the billboard to say Craig is great, but
nope.
And we tried to put Craig's picture on it, but just way too much.
We want to drive people to the KCSN network, so we did the thing that we should have done.
All right,
let's be distracting for drivers going by as they stared at it.
Too much handsomeness. That's what the billboard company just said. Can
we talk about the Jaguars yet? I think it's time to talk about the Jaguars.
Sure, fine. Okay. We're going to talk about the offensive side of the football for the Kansas City Chiefs in their game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. First, we lead with the offense, and we're going to lead with the thing that it feels like we've been hammering and discussing forever, but it's just the reality of things. This football team can't turn the ball over. They just can't turn the ball over, Matthew.
Well, I would push back. They can turn the ball over once, twice, just maybe avoid 3 or 4 of them in a game, and this offense is probably working just fine, right? They turned the ball over 3 times against the Jaguars in the first matchup. So they did that, and they gave up an onside kick recovery. So I would argue that that's losing the turnover battle 4-0. And they still won by 10 points, which was more than 10 points until the final couple minutes of the game. So, the Chiefs comfortably won. The Chiefs were comfortably able to put enough points up on the board despite the turnovers. We've seen from that moment on down the stretch, the Chiefs have been a little prone to turnovers, and they come in a myriad of different ways. There's fumbles on special teams. There's fumbles from ball carriers, from receivers. There's interceptions being thrown when they shouldn't be. Just, you can't turn the ball over. And especially if you're going to do it, there's no real good place to turn the ball over. But the Chiefs have, had a pretty bad knack for turning the ball over in their own territory. Opponents are in scoring position already. I think that's really where your big issue is. Avoid those. The Chiefs can handle. The Chiefs offense can handle losing the turnover margin by 1 or 2. It's not perfect. It's not what the goal is, but they can handle it. I get a little bit more worried when it starts creeping up into 3, 4, 5 again, like it has been at times this year.
Yeah, that's really concerning, especially for a Jaguars team that's really good at turning the ball over. And I say that, with a little trepidation. Turnovers are a little bit luck-based, obviously, here. So, you only have so much of that. But they are 5th in the league in defense in creating turnovers. They've done a really good job. And, they consistently force them out of the opposition. As a matter of fact, last week's game against the Los Angeles Chargers is the first game in 6 weeks that they haven't forced a turnover, and only one of those games was a singular one. So they come in bunches. And so this Jaguars team is good at leaping on balls, getting interceptions, finding ways to force mistakes. And this is a little different team. This Jacksonville Jaguars team is a little different team than they were the last time they played the Kansas City Chiefs. They were a little bit in the doldrums. They hadn't quite figured out what their offense was yet. The defense hadn't come around the entire way. They are a better team than they were the last time they played the Chiefs. Now, I'll argue the Chiefs are as well. There's more for that to be discussed here in a little bit. But the Chiefs can't put themselves in that hole again. They just simply can't, especially against a team that is good at taking the ball away. So protect the ball, 2 hands on it at all times. Patrick, don't throw silly interceptions there. Don't take those chances if you don't have to. Work it out in a way that you can mitigate some of those, because this team thrives on turning the ball over and scoring off of those turnovers. And frankly, that's been the Chiefs' bugaboo throughout this year.
Yeah, I think it's just for this team, it's like, yes, can they get away with it a little bit? But this is not the time to be messing with that anymore. And I think that's what one of the points of emphasis needs to be, is like, in this time when you're at the end of your season, you can't leave stuff like turnovers up for chance too much. And I trust Patrick Mahomes not to put the ball at risk too much. It's going to fall on guys not putting the ball on the ground and fumbles. Now, I feel like they've had a little bit of when the ball gets on the ground, they've had a little bit of bad luck to this point too, I would say. They've lost a lot of their fumbles, but I just ball security, I think. And I think situationally, like, just hold on to the football when you're in your own territory, and you're in a plus territory. Like it's not as bad when you're in plus territory, I guess, is the line of thinking there. The Jaguars pass rush has some dudes, has some guys getting better as the season have gone on. They have a little depth to them. It's going to present a challenge, Matthew, with this pass rush.
Yeah, so the Jaguars' sack percentage on the year is pretty low in the NFL. I think they are a bottom 10 team just in terms of, sacks per pass attempt. But if you look over the past few weeks, they've it's been ramping up for them. So 5 out of the last 6 games, they've gotten 3 or more sacks in those games. So the pass rush is kind of ramping up. I think you see Trevon Walker, rookie defensive end, taking a pretty good step forward. They're starting to play a little bit more cohesive as a unit. And I think you saw that kind of become an issue a little bit against the Chargers and Justin Herbert, especially as that comeback was coming. But now, using that same metric, I do want to say why this is kind of an interesting matchup to watch. The Chiefs haven't given up 3 sacks in a single game since the Tennessee Titans in week 9. So this is kind of 2 things battling it out. The Jaguars are on this tear of recording sacks and making sure they bring down opposing quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes is very difficult to bring down. He's very difficult to actually sack. And even when you do, he's usually, losing like 1 or 2 yards on those plays. So that's something to keep your eye on, is just which one of these two units that are both playing pretty well here down the stretch really start to take over. Is it the pass rush getting the best of the Chiefs offensive line unit? Or is this rested up Chiefs offensive line unit going to be able to hold a pass rush in check that doesn't really have a star, and they don't really have a ton of guys that are great at winning one-on-one? They just kind of overwhelm you throughout the game, and they have multiple guys who are capable of winning at any point in time. They kind of search out a weakness, and the Chiefs whole unit will have to play together to avoid that from happening.
You would think that them losing a player like Dwayne Smoot, who was excellent this year, really put on a show, was really good for this team, would actually bring their sack numbers down, bring their pressure numbers down, and it hasn't. Roy Robertson-Harris has been really good. He stepped up in a big way. Devon Hamilton does a pretty good job of doing that. But yeah, it comes through Josh Allen and it comes through Travon Walker. Like, those are the two guys that you see kind of bring the most heat, bring the most pressure, and they work really well off of each other. I mean, you saw multiple times this past weekend against Justin Herbert, a quarterback that likes to get the ball out quickly, doesn't like to stand in the pocket and take sacks, that they were kind of rushing on levels. You would have a guy like Josh Allen getting a little more depth, or Travon Walker getting a little more depth, and the other one working an inside move opposite him and kind of a pincher sort of thing. And, Justin Herbert, who's good at moving in the pocket and good at manipulating that, had nowhere to go. Like, it was just kind of dumbfounded for a lot of those, and took a lot of hits, took some sacks. And it was part of the reason why the Jaguars were able to claw their way back in this game, because they got the Chargers offense to consistently stall out. The times that we have seen this Chiefs offense be even a little bit vulnerable this year, not just from turnovers, but the times that we've seen it has been when they've allowed a lot of hits on Patrick Mahomes, against teams that have done a good job bringing pressure, good job getting free hits, and a good job of rushing low numbers and still hitting the quarterback. Now, that's true of every quarterback, but it's definitely been the case when we've seen Patrick Mahomes look mortal this year. So got to do a good job. Orlando Brown Jr., Andrew Wiley have a lot on their plate this week. That rush duo is good rush duo. So protect the edges well. And I think that this goes in the Chiefs' way in the passing game.
Keep an eye on the Jaguars adding a second or third level defender to spy Patrick Mahomes and chase and pursue whenever he gets out of the pocket. That's something that they have shown. And that's something that the Buffalo Bills had a lot of success with in that big matchup against them. I could see some teams going to the well this postseason with some of that kind of look again. And the Jaguars are one of the teams that actually has shown that they are willing to do that. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We appreciate everybody that is that's hanging out with us right now. The third storyline, Jaguars going to play some zone coverage. The Chiefs are going to have to test the Jags zone spacing. Is it going to be any good, Craig?
I mean, that's going to be the question right there. The Jaguars, as of late, especially when defending trips, have really struggled with the spacing between their cornerback and their apex defender. That's the first player inside of the cornerback. And so you got to see the Chargers manipulate them a little bit by running some of these trips looks, by having the number two receiver basically run a little bit of a curl or something like that, an intermediate route that's basically a vertical release, with the other two receivers running an out route, running a skinny post, and pulling the cornerback and the apex defender apart from each other. Now, normally you would look at that and you'd say, okay, well, you're going to have the coach correct that, bring the apex in, trust that you're going to pass off of the safety, but time and time again, they left that guy open. And Justin Herbert and a lot of the stuff that he was doing, and granted, they run a lot of stick routes, so like it is just that over there, but that route is wide open. And it wasn't just because it was a curl route and you had a safety that was backpedaling out and there was just a bunch of space there. That safety wasn't anywhere near it. You can hit that guy on the run, get a guy with some vertical speed, kind of run some of these shoot routes and get them moving up the field. And with a guy like Kadarius Toney, maybe at the number two, even Travis Kelce working at the number two there, getting that player in space and taking advantage of the gap in the zone there is going to be massive. We've seen the Chiefs manipulate zone, man. It doesn't really matter what they've seen this year. They've done a good job against it, but especially zone with guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, Travis Kelce, finding the seams there. There is a very natural seam in this Jaguars defense, especially when you go to those trips looks, that I just think the Chiefs like to live out of 3-by-1. I just think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity there for whoever's in the number two receiver slot to see that space and see that opening to find passes.
And for me, I agree with what Craig's saying. I think something important for the Chiefs too is going to be making sure they stress this Jaguars zone defense vertically, right? So you want to make sure you're making them respect a little bit of a vertical pass, because we saw in the first matchup, the safeties were coming downhill. I mean, that's how we ended up getting Juju Smith-Schuster knocked out of the game. Andre Cisco was working across the field, but still coming downhill a little bit on the Marquez Valdez-Scantling hit a little bit after that. Like, the safeties were driving on intermediate routes underneath. And I think you're going to see, one, teams are going to have been doing that to the Chiefs all year. But two, you have a very aggressive backline for this Jaguars defense. That was Andre Cisco's entire MO, was he is going to take absolutely anything he sees, and it's going to turn into a great play or a terrible play. That was who he was in college. That's who he still kind of is in the NFL. So I think the Chiefs are going to have to make sure they are staying, true to where they're supposed to be. They might have to force a deep shot or two down the field, whether it's an MVS, a Justin Watson, or, like Craig's saying, getting Tony working down the sideline seems to be one of their better routes in this regard. Just, they're going to have to make them honor that deep shot, because I think it gets a lot harder if you let the Jaguars start to creep in a little bit. Their middle field defense coverage, terrible. God awful. It's like actually actively bad. They are 100% terrible against tight ends. They don't fare a whole lot better against slot wide receivers that work over the middle of the field. They really struggle there. And one of their solutions is to have their safeties driving on stuff. If you force those safeties back out to respect the vertical route in some of these coverages, that opens it up even that much more for all these other guys the Chiefs really want to work there. So just make them respect it. Make them respect it in the first 15, even if you don't connect. If they respect it, that defense becomes a lot easier to pick apart throughout the whole game. That's what the Chargers couldn't do. No Mike Williams, because you broke his back by sending him out there too early. They had zero vertical threat. And then especially once they lost their other wide receiver, whose name I'm blanking on, that was replacing him, they had absolutely no vertical presence on that team. It was all stick routes or Keenan Allen go break someone's ankles and hope they're not doubling you. And the Chiefs can't fall into that same trap by not sending guys downfield.
You look at last time that these two teams matched up. Travis Kelce had a 46-yard catch. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 36-yard catch. Kadarius Toney had that 23-yard fade down the sideline. Juju Smith-Schuster caught one for 25. I don't think the air yards were particularly big on that one, but you just see, like, there, that I think you're right. Just try to hit some stuff down the field, hit some stuff vertically a little bit. It can, soften some things up too. And the thing is, this is a really young secondary. Like, this is a very young secondary. You got to go test them. They've got a couple guys that are second-year players in the back end of their defense playing heavy minutes with Tyson, or heavy time with Tyson Campbell and Andre Cisco. So, go challenge. You talked about maybe the lack of discipline from an Andre Cisco. Yeah, you might want to go test him. I'm not testing Tucker Franklin, especially if he's going to tell me about DraftKings.
The NFL playoff action continues. We're one step closer to Super Bowl 57, and for the NFL divisional round, check out DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Plus, all new and existing customers can take a shot at an even bigger payout with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Boost your NFL winnings with each leg you add up to 100%. I love doing the stepped-up same-game parlays. I've been doing the anytime touchdown score parlays. They're always fun, and you always got a chance, as BJ Kissel says. And here's what you got to do. You got to download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code KCSN. New customers can bet just $5 on the NFL divisional round and get $200 in free bets instantly only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code KCSN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See the show notes for details.
Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're watching. Really appreciate everybody. Leave some comments if you'd like. We're all pretty excited here to be previewing this game. It's playoff season. It's kind of the time that we've all been looking forward to. But yeah, just stick with us. If you hit the subscribe button, you get to hang out with us and all the content we've got going day over day. So we've got something posting literally every single day. Players to watch on the offensive side of the ball. What say you, Craig?
We get one of these. Each one of us gets one of these once a year. I'm burning mine this week. Travis Kelce. The Jacksonville Jaguars are dead last in the NFL at defending tight ends. They give up the most yards, the most catches, most touchdowns. That's not what they do well. They do not defend it well. It's a good thing the Chiefs have the best tight end in the NFL because they're going to lean on him a lot this week. We see in the playoffs, Patrick Mahomes, when he is dialed in, when they've got the game plan tailor-made to beat the opponent, where does he go? More often than not, Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce's going to get a ton of targets this week. I have no idea what the over is or what his line is this week, but I'm hammering the over. I just am hammering the over because he's going to have a big game against these guys. He wants to go out, set a precedent, start fast, score touchdowns, get up big because they got bigger fish to fry. Not just talking about Bills and Bengals. I'm talking about trying to win a Super Bowl here. So I expect a monster game straight out of the gate from Travis Kelce this week.
I think that's the very clear answer to this, looking what tight ends do to the Jaguars every single time they go up against them. I am going to go with the other receiver option over the middle of the field and in the intermediate areas. We're going to go with Juju Smith-Schuster. Getting knocked out of the last game, he's come out and he's addressed it, saying that Andre Sisco reached out to him. And I don't think the hit on Juju Smith-Schuster was in any way, shape, or form dirty. I think it probably should have been a penalty, but it wasn't dirty at all. It was just a bad, unlucky hit. But I think you're going to come out to this game and you're going to have a little chip on your shoulder of wanting to get back out there and show them what you can do. I think the Chiefs have started to shy away from funneling some offense through him, and I think this is one of the few times where I think it might be trying to keep a little bit of their plan under wraps. It's one of the few times where I will actually buy the conspiracy theory that the Chiefs are trying not to show all of their cards before it matters, because when it got tight there in the middle of the season, when they were trying to figure out everything, he was a huge part of the offense. Down the stretch, he's kind of only been relied on third downs or when things are stalling out. I think you're going to see that early season version of Juju Smith-Schuster when they started getting things clicking. So Travis Kelce's undoubtedly going to get a ton of attention because of how good he is. I think that's going to leave a lot of other space over the middle of the field. You make them respect the vertical route. You pay a lot of attention to Travis Kelce. There's a whole lot of open space for Juju to run around. So I could really see him having a huge game for the Chiefs in all those voided areas.
We're not sure the status of McCole Hardman moving forward for the remainder of this playoffs. We know he's out for this week. And the guy best equipped to operate, and the guy that has done a outstanding job doing what McCole Hardman has been doing for this offense with some of the manufactured touches behind the line of scrimmage, getting, speed to the edge, some of the touch passes. It's been Kadarius Toney. And the last time that these two teams matched up, Kadarius Toney kind of had his coming out party. I think he had 4 catches, 57 yards, and a touchdown. He had 2 carries for 33 yards. I mean, that's 90 total yards that he put on the field there. And I think, I love what he's been able to do to this offense when he's healthy. There's been some, injury concerns with some soft tissue stuff, and he was dealing with that when he was with the Giants. But when he's on the field, he's electric. He's a guy that factors in significantly to this football team. And he's had a lot of time to kind of get integrated into this offense, to kind of understand what is expected of him and what is needed of him on a week-to-week basis. And I think that's the role that he's going to take on is that McCole Hardman role. He maybe doesn't have the highest gear that McCole does, but what he doesn't have there, he makes up for with a lot of that wiggle to him and a lot of change of direction ability and creativity and space. And so I'm excited to see what he does for this offense. I think you're going to see him in a bigger role than you're anticipating right now, because I think this team has shown, hey, this is the kind of stuff we want to do specifically in the red zone. And I think, they're going to try to get him some touches out there in space as well. Let's talk about the defense now. And we're going to start with defending 12 personnel. Point of emphasis this week, Matthew?
Yeah, it's a personnel grouping that the Jaguars will like to go into, and what it does a couple things for them, because it's kind of like a miniature version of the Chiefs, right? Because Evan Ingram can act as a de facto wide receiver and can beat man coverage if you do get a safety matched up on him or one of your corners or whatever. He can actively still win that matchup one-on-one. So you have to treat him in coverage like some form of wide receiver. He's just good enough as a blocker. I think he's a little bit more French than even Kelce is, but he's just good enough as a blocker that they like to get him out of move or give him an easy down block, usually up on the second level. And they utilize those 2 tight ends if you're going to play lighter personnel to get Travis Etienne out on the edge a lot. They like to get runs out wide, utilize the speed they have, and this allows them to use multiple tight ends, let Ingram, who's not a great blocker, getting out into space. That's how they threaten you with the run out of 12 personnel. Then now you go into the pass. Now you're getting into it again. You have a tight end that acts as a wide receiver out there. That already creates a matchup nightmare if you're playing against the run, against when you see this heavier personnel. So they do prevent a little bit of a unique matchup problem that not a lot of other teams, especially ones that are left in the playoffs, you really think of like this. Now, I will argue that the Chiefs, having Travis Kelce, what they see in practice, are probably very well equipped to handle this. They see this all year long, not just season, but all year long when it comes to football stuff. They are very well aware of what you do when you have a receiving tight end, of this caliber. But it is something the Jaguars have used as a weapon, and they've really used it really well to get guys, to get ETN out in space. Like, that's where I think they've been most impressive with it, is running out of it. And that's funny because Evan Ingram's biggest weakness as a player is probably his blocking, but they have found a way to weaponize that and then still use the run game and get that speed out going in the open field.
And part of that's because of where Evan Ingram lines up. He's not necessarily lining up as a true inline tight end. Now, they run a lot of stuff where they got the 12 personnel and they've got YY to one side and the two other receivers is a 2x2 set with both tight ends aligned on one side of the line there that causes a natural shift, and then they'll run away from that. Again, like Maddie said, you're not going to lean on Evan Ingram as an inline blocker as much, but they'll also line him up as an H-back. They'll line him up as a condensed receiver and kind of have him climb to the second level block guys. They'll line him up in the backfield as a fullback in some of their gun looks. Like they use him all over the place. He's a guy that they're going to have to pay attention to all game long. And I know that it's easy to just say, I know what defenses do where they just say, hey, listen, Travis Kelce's a receiver. We're going to treat him as a receiver. If we get beat by him in the run game a little bit, no worries. Like, it's not a big deal. We know this team wants to pass. That's not necessarily the case with the Jaguars. A lot of what they do stems from getting the ball in Travis Etienne's hands. And yes, Trevor Lawrence looked great. Yes, they've got a set of receivers that frankly is playing really well. But a lot of their explosive stuff that they like to hit and they like to do comes from these gap scheme runs where they get Evan Ingram on the move. They'll get a guard pulling out in space, and then they'll let Travis Etienne just continue to bounce and bounce and bounce until he finds the edge, puts his foot in the ground, and uses that explosion to get upfield. He does not want to run on the interior. And so you have to defend the edges really well. Chiefs have good edge setting, defensive ends. They do a really good job with that. But when you get that extra blocker, you create that extra gap by the guy being on the move, Evan Ingram being on the move. It doesn't matter who it is. You've got to have somebody that is willing to come downhill and set the edge. And so far this season, yes, the DBs are willing and they like to slip blocks and things like that. But it's been guys like Leo Chanel, Willie Gay Jr. that have been the guys that have come up and made the big plays in those runs. And that requires you to be in your base defense where you're not good defending the pass, and they're going to have Evan Ingram running into space. And so it creates this weird blend of damned if you do, damned if you don't against this defense, especially since they can be so explosive on the ground, can be explosive through the air with that personnel. It creates a unique opportunity here. Steve Spagnuolo has to really decide what he wants to do. Keep L'Jarius Sneed in the slot there, play him in the box, play Justin Reed in the box, maybe go single high. There's a lot of different options that they can use that's not just the base defense, but I do expect that on some early downs, we're going to see plenty of Leo Chanel because they're going to want to set that edge, create a negative play or a short gain, and then get into the nickel and try and stop Trevor Lawrence on second down.
Did you guys know that Doug Peterson used to coach for the Chiefs and was an Andy Reid disciple? Did you know that? Some of the things that I see the Jaguars do with Evan Ingram, it's not Travis Kelce, but they're able to manipulate and create matchups for Evan Ingram the same way the Chiefs are so good at doing that for Travis Kelce. And like, that's one of the things that they've been able to do in the middle of the field that I think has been kind of impressive is, hey, we're going to create a little space. We're going to throw some smash it's almost like a little smash concept here. We're going to get some spacing away from the middle of the field, and we're going to let Evan Ingram run a skip route or a whip route or a hitch route or an option route. We're just going to kind of give him a little bit of space to work. That's been one of the things that, like, when I was just watching, it's just like they're not the same player, but Doug Peterson has a guy that can do some of those things that kind of help an offense and help a young quarterback succeed. Speaking of middle field coverage, probably going to be a pretty look. Teams like to spam things, and they are going to tell you what your weakness is by how they attack you in the playoffs. There's some gamesmanship a little bit, at times throughout the year. You're going to know what the Chiefs or what teams think about the Chief fence and where to attack them. And it could be in the middle of the field.
No, absolutely. And that's kind of what Jacksonville came out and tried to do against the Chargers in the first half. Was they came out and they went back to what they have been running essentially all year long, which is, hey, we're going to run a bunch of mesh concepts, and our change up to a lot of this is going to be a deep crosser. And then we're going to make you deal with stopping all of this. And if, you're going to play zone, guess what we're going to do? We're just going to sit down in the open space in these mesh concepts, and then we're going to run them through versus man. So the Chargers recognized this. And what the Chargers did was really, they just drove on all of it. They got real physical at the breaks. They were cutting these mesh concepts. They weren't trying to run with them all the way across the field. They were using linebacker safeties or nickel backs from the other side of the field to cut a lot of it. And they were able to force some tighter window throws. Yes, some poorly ran routes and a tip ball. You played a role and some of the interceptions, but the Chargers were generally defending it really well. Anytime that Trevor Lawrence tried to push the ball on the deeper crosses or some of these deeper, back breaking or in breaking routes, he was a tick late because of how physical the Chargers defensive backs were being. And he had to kind of wait to see when his receiver was going to break through. So the Chargers answer was essentially just be overly physical and kind of slow it down. And that worked for the first half. But as soon as it got to the second half, the Jaguars changed what they were doing a little bit, but it also stopped working a little bit less, because what you started to see is Doug Peterson came out and said, okay, if you're going to do all this, well, guess what? Now when it looks like we should run through, we're still going to sit down on mesh. Or guess what? You're going to play into this leverage. How about we just run a free out route because you're giving us outside leverage and we have a quarterback who can throw a 15-yard out like no one's business. So they're really good at not forcing it if you're selling out to take it away. And that's going to be the issue. The Chiefs, to stop middle of the field passes, have to sell out. They can't do anything but sell out to stop it. They have to flood it with multiple players because they don't have the bodies. They don't have the coverage players to put there and cover excessive ground. They have to sell out. If you do that, you're leaving corners one-on-one vertically and outbreaking routes or safeties. And that's kind of what happened a little bit in the Chiefs' first matchup, was they were trying to protect the middle of the field a little bit, and they started getting beat to the outside or on some vertical routes at times. So they're kind of up against a double-edged blade here in this one.
It really is going to be a tough one. Doug Peterson really is a hell of a coach there. And he came out in that Chargers game and said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to attack one player on this defense that we don't think can cover our guys. You know who they attacked? Kenneth Murray.
Kenneth Murray. Yep.
Kenneth Murray, the middle linebacker who struggles in coverage. Guys, Nick Bolton's going to play a very important role in both the run and the pass, and I hope that the run game is so good that if Doug Peterson chooses to target him in the way that they targeted Kenneth Murray, they put so much on his plate. Like, I'm not even looking at it from the Kenneth Murray standpoint and saying, man, that guy was terrible in coverage, and they just exploited all of that. They put so much on his plate. They targeted him in a way that they did not target other members of the Chargers. I expect that in the pass game for Nick Bolton. So Nick Bolton has a good game defending the pass. This probably goes very positively for the Chiefs. But yes, lots of mesh concepts, lots of mesh sit concepts where they're trying to drag the Mike linebacker either out of the zone to hit the sit route in the middle of the field, or try and get him to kind of collapse on that sit route and just allow those throwing lanes to be wide open there, because they ran so many drags, so much mesh. They are just trying man beaters with these over and over and over again. And what the Chargers did really well, and I expect to see a little bit out of Steve Spagnuolo, is that they were leaning on what Trevor was doing pre-snap. And Doug went away from this in the second half, so we'll see if it comes back. But Trevor would send guys in motion, so the Chargers would follow him, give him the man tell, and then drop into zone. And Trevor would be kind of a little bit locked in. So, it's man coverage. This guy's going to keep going. This receiver running the route the way that he was, we're going to keep running this because I'm in man coverage. I'm going to run away from my guys. And then there was a trap defender on the other side. Guys sitting in the flat in the zone, able to collapse on that. That was one of those interceptions. It was really, really well done that they kind of messed with his man zone tells. If you can get them, especially if he's trying to play fast, trying to execute mesh drags really, really quickly, trying to see those things really quickly and take advantage of those, you can mess with him a little bit with some of those tells. Spagnuolo hasn't done a ton of that this year, but there's been a little bit here and there. He's certainly done it the past 3 years really, really well. So I wonder if it's in the playbook and they've just been waiting for an opportunity to use it. This would be a time to do that and try and get him to be a little more basic and have to hold on to the ball a little bit more in the second quarter, second half, whenever it is that Doug inevitably makes the adjustment again and starts relying so much on that tell, then try and tee off with your 4-man rush when he's holding the ball a little bit longer.
Trevor Lawrence averaged 6.1 yards per attempt in the game against the Los Angeles Chargers. And honestly, I mean, he was peppering inside of 10 yards. They had a couple. I mean, they had Zay Jones run free on the deep cross. That was kind of their big, explosive play, explosive touchdown of the game. But a lot of it, their comeback was just peppering and spamming the inside 10 yards and in. Like, it was just constant. It was unceasing. So it's something to keep an eye on. You talk about, we're going to talk about pressuring Trevor Lawrence. Like, it kind of fits into the same.
Before we go there,
okay, whatever.
I do have something else here. I can't put it in the chat, so I just got to go. Trevor Lawrence against the Chiefs only attempted 3 passes between the hash marks in the first game. Completed all 3 because he only had like 6 incompletions in the entire game. But he only attempted 3 in between the hash marks. And if you even widen that out to the numbers, you're still looking at only about 50% of his pass attempts were even in between the numbers. They were throwing a lot of balls at the line of scrimmage. They threw a lot of quick screens, a lot of quick stuff versus the Chiefs because that pass rush was eating them alive. But they also had success throwing it into the boundary, right? And we talked about the Chiefs kind of had to sell out a little bit to protect the middle of the field. So what they were doing is your outside corners or safety, if they were playing over the top, had to play a little softer because they were by themselves. They were giving up a lot of 5, 10, 15-yard outbreaking routes based on leverage. And I don't know if they'll do that again. That's obviously a lot harder to throw, but Trevor Lawrence, especially if you're not pressuring him, is a very good quarterback at throwing them. He's one of the best intermediate football, ball throwers right now in the entire NFL. He prefers to throw it over the middle of the field, but he can throw that out route perfectly fine, as we saw versus the Chiefs in the first game. So it's just, there's kind of the Chiefs' solution the first time around was to take away the middle of the field stuff. But if they did get beat on the outside a little bit, we'll see what they do this time around. I think they should probably do the same thing, though.
Yeah, why not? Pressuring Trevor Lawrence. Chris Jones, we know he doesn't have a sack yet. And I keep going back and thinking about, hey, look, we're talking about some of this middle field coverage. Do you want something else can help protect the middle of your field? Interior pressure and guys that are getting their hands up. I mean, like those two things can really help impact their middle of field defense. The Chiefs are very good at, their edges are very good at deflecting passes. But I mean, even Chris Jones can alter this game in a big, big way, pressuring Trevor Lawrence. I think it starts with that, Matthew.
I wonder how many tip passes Trevor Lawrence has this year. He's a big guy. I don't know if it's that many. I'm trying to quickly pull it up as we're going here. I don't see it when I'm quickly looking through, so he must not be very high. I honestly bet he's pretty low, even though he likes to throw. Oh, no, here he is. That's passing attempts. Never mind. So I don't know where he's at on there. He's I just imagine it's not very high, though, because he is a bigger quarterback. I think he's pretty good in that regard. But I agree. Interior pressure. Trevor Lawrence, from a clean pocket, is arguably a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, right? He is one of the best quarterbacks when he is kept clean, when he's playing on time, when he doesn't have to move. He is very, very good. I think he operates similar to how Justin Herbert does. He's not quite as fast and quite as rigid, but he's very checklist oriented. And so when he's not pressured, when he's not rushed, he can go through his progressions. I think he's pretty good at even waiting on a guy that he thinks has proper leverage or will become open. He'll linger on a read to get them the ball a little later than you would imagine. Something that Herbert doesn't do. Like, that's a bonus. But what that means is when you get him off, out of rhythm, when you start to pressure him and even just make him move, it turns ugly, and it turns ugly fast. He's one of the absolute worst quarterbacks in the NFL when he's pressured. He is downright terrible when he is under pressure, because all of a sudden that checklist, you have to start skipping steps. You don't start checking, okay, is this guy open? Where's the safety at? You just have to kind of go on instinct and ad lib, and that's not his game. So what happened in that first Chiefs game, the Chiefs didn't pressure him a ton, but they were getting home. And that made him start to play a little quick until halftime when Doug Peterson got him settled down a little bit. The Chiefs let off the gas. He kind of started to pick them apart because the pressure came a lot less often. But what the Chiefs did was win with the blitz. They put the Jaguars in absolute hell with the blitz in the first half. The Jaguars had no clue who was rushing, who was dropping, who to pick up. They constantly left free rushers out there, or if they didn't have a free rusher, come on, Kent. Come on, jump in.
Well, just one of the things that, you can finish your thought, but I was going to let Craig do. I want to jump in before you do. So just finish your thought if you had anything more on that.
Buddy, I got a lot more. So they would have a running back would have to work across the entire formation to pick up a blitzer on the opposite side because they don't have the calls correct. The way Steve Spagnuolo got deep into his blitz packages, you would see 3 guys possibly coming. You would have 1 guy checked to be on Lawrence. That's his guy to beat if he comes. But what the Chiefs did, they somehow would get a guy on the opposite side of the formation as the free rusher based on alignment, the way they slanted it. And they were killing the Jaguars with it early in the game. So what happened is it went on. Now the Jaguars are having to call their protection calls a little different. They're now worried about picking up everybody. And what did that do? That left Chris Jones one-on-one with Brandon Scherf during the worst season of his career. That got guys isolated one-on-one with Jawan Taylor. That had Travis Etienne trying to block Willie Gay, manned up with Willie Gay at the head of steam. Like, they were doing such a good job of not only pressuring with the blitz, but getting advantageous matchups that Trevor Lawrence never got comfortable until the second half. And by then, I would argue the game was kind of out of reach the way things were going for them. And that's when you saw the Chiefs kind of let their foot off the gas a little bit.
If I can just jump in real quick, Craig, I apologize. This doesn't happen very often, but just kind of piggybacking on
No. I'm so proud of our boy, Matty. Like he wants to jump in and talk defense. Let's let him.
I just think, like, I look at it's kind of still offense. I still look at it from an offensive perspective, but I just look at like Doug Peterson. He loves to run mesh. He likes the condensed formations. Well, that puts the Chiefs in an advantageous position to potentially be a little bit more exotic when Doug Peterson goes into those condensed looks. And that if you're going to try to run all of your principles and your staples out of that condensed stuff, that can actually be problematic in some ways for them, just because I think Steve Spagnuolo is good enough in his bag enough, especially this time of season in January, to throw some stuff at them when they do try to go condensed. So sorry, Craig. That's
perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, especially early in the season, every time the Chiefs were seeing condensed, they basically gave Willie Gay Jr. and L'Jarius Sneed, free reign to blitz. They said, "Hey, listen, we'll cover you on the back end because you guys are so good at doing this," and they were blowing up everything. Like there was a lot of that, and I think that tainted some of what the Chiefs fans thought about the 4-man pass rush for such a long time because the blitz was so good early on. That's where a lot of the pressure and a lot of the sacks were coming from, because they were screaming off the edge, getting this quick pressure, getting these quick sacks. And so when it was late in the season and the Chiefs are 3rd, 4th, 5th, now 2nd, in sacks, people are going, "Oh, that was all blitz." It wasn't, but because in the early parts of the season, it was. That's still in the holster. Steve Spagnuolo is still going to be able to utilize that, still going to be able to lean on that. Chris Jones, I want to spend just a minute on here. I'm sure it will be, it's not my player to watch, but I want to get this out there. Chris Jones is going to play like a man possessed in this playoffs. He's going to be a monster. And what you saw against the Raiders was just the start. That was a guy that realizes that he wants to play his best football in January. He's tired of having this albatross hanging around his neck, no sacks in the playoffs, not producing in the playoffs, not getting there in the playoffs. He is playing at a defensive player of the year level. He is going up against a very banged up interior offensive line that could be missing starters. It's not going to matter. Chris Jones is going to be an absolute mauler in the middle of this. I think we are going to look at this game, not just from him being able to say, "Okay, that's it. I finally got my postseason sack multiples." Like, I think he's going to be hunting Trevor Lawrence all game long because he knows the significance of this. He knows the narrative surrounding him. He wants to completely eliminate it. And frankly, one good game right here in the divisional round eliminates it, gets rid of it. Like we can just bury it then and there, because with the season that he's had, if he continues that into the postseason, yes, dead and buried, move on with it.
So I've done it. I have found the batted passes stats of the NFL. I have done it. Trevor Lawrence, I was entirely incorrect. He's 4th in the NFL in passes batted at 17.
Holy cow.
Which makes sense, though. Throwing over the middle of the field so much, that makes sense. And yeah, here's a fun fact. Here's guys ahead of him: Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson. Those are the only 3 guys ahead of him. Yeah, a lot of it kind of makes sense. A lot of shorter throws, a lot of guys getting the ball out kind of quickly. Wilson has tried to throw the ball over the middle of the field this year, so that's probably why that's jumped up. So Trevor Lawrence is 4th at 17. Let's go find Patrick Mahomes real quick. So he's 21st in the league at 8. Here's the thing. The person within even 100 pass attempts of him is Geno Smith at 14th with 11 passes batted or knocked down. Just the very few times that Mahomes is having a ball batted down is insane. Other guys tied with him, Aaron Rodgers, who threw 140 less pass attempts, Mac Jones, who threw 200 less pass attempts, Kenny Pickett, who's like 300, like the amount of passes he has batted down is such a minimal amount. And then you have, guys like Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, still in the playoffs, hanging out up here. A lot of them.
Hashtag analytics. Trevor Lawrence's first interception of last week's game came on a tip pass by Joey Bosa trying to fit a ball on a little RPO, a little glance RPO. So if last I checked, the Chiefs have two of the best in the NFL at batting passes on the edge in Carlos Dunlap and George Karlaftis. Just saying. Hit the like button. Hit the
interior.
I was going to say, Chris Jones on that line, Frank Clark on that line. Man.
Willie hanging out there too.
Look,
there's a lot of guys.
Carlos Dunlap is tied for first in the NFL among defensive linemen in passes defense, and Karlaftis is one behind him. It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's insane. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, please, if you wouldn't mind. Also, leave a comment and tell us your players to watch on the defensive side of the football. We're about to give you ours, and Craig's about to lead us off.
I'm going L'Jarius Sneed. Last time these two teams played, I think we saw L'Jarius Sneed's worst game of the year. He was targeted 7 times. He gave up 7 catches for 69 yards, nice, and 2 touchdowns. So easily his worst game of the year, I think. I think that was the point where we started kind of backing down from some of the L'Jarius Sneed hype train because he was full bore before this game. Like he was playing, making impact after impact play, and it just kind of backed off a little bit. He's been good for the rest of the year, don't get me wrong, but that was the one that derailed some of the conversation around him. He has an opportunity to redeem himself here, especially since he may not play in the slot. We'll see. They have been rotating guys in and out, having him play on the boundary a little bit, having Trent McDuffie play in the slot a little bit. By doing that, I think you get guys that are more tailor-made for matchups. If Christian Kirk is going to line up in the slot, I think Trent McDuffie makes a ton of sense there, just like having a guy like Marvin Jones, Zay Jones on the outside. L'Jarius Sneed can absolutely lock those guys down. So I want to see a big rebound game from L'Jarius Sneed. Get a pick on the edge, drive on something out there, and he's going to have to tackle really well because Etienne's going to continue to bounce and hit the edge. That's when we're going to see L'Jarius Sneed make an impact, coming up with stops in the flat, one-on-one with the running back. That can be huge this week.
I want to use my time here on the player to watch to continue the L'Jarius Sneed discussion because he got beat like a drum in that first matchup. It was bad. Christian Kirk was giving him the business. It was not looking pretty, whether it was out of base and he was playing on the outside in the slot. Like it was a rough matchup. And we've spent a lot of time down the stretch here talking about how Sneed is shadowing number 1 wide receivers and all stuff. And I fully agree. I think it's helped unlock a lot of stuff for the Chiefs. I wonder if this is one of those games where Sneed shadowing a number 2 wide receiver might not be more beneficial for the team. And that allows Trent McDuffie, who's probably got a better athletic profile, to match up with Christian Kirk out of the slot. And you can still give him more help now. If you feel comfortable with Sneed covering Marvin Jones vertically, like that seems like a dream matchup for Sneed. That's a matchup where you would expect Sneed to be able to erase Marvin Jones entirely from the game plan. It's a bigger vertical receiver with some pace. He likes to win downfield. That's L'Jarius Sneed's specialty. Let him take him away. You can now help against Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, and Christian Kirk. Trent McDuffie's skill set is better suited for Christian Kirk out of the slot. It went really poorly the first time around when Sneed was trying to keep up with the change of direction and the quickness of Christian Kirk. That's not Sneed's game. He's a longer guy. He's got longer levers. He takes a little bit to turn sometimes. He's physical. He's fast. That's just not his dream matchup. So I really wonder if you want to put him outside on a Marvin Jones, let Trent slide into the slot and take over Kirk. So that's why Trent McDuffie is my de facto player to watch because they've been working on this, and I wonder if it's for this reason. But I think this whole conversation is just worth talking about and considering because I think Snead shadowing somebody else, it'll look like you're not utilizing your number one corner versus a number one wide receiver. But I think if the Chiefs do that, you're opening up everything else for everyone else. I mean, it's the whole Bill Belichick.
Yep.
Right. Now, I think with Snead and McDuffie, you can probably play matchups like this too a little bit. Like, it's not just to get Snead on the number 2 to open up everyone else. Just there's some receivers that Snead might not match up great against. And Kirk might be one of them. McDuffie might be one. So why not try this and give this a go at times? So I just got my eyes on that going forward.
I too would like to use my time to talk about legit. No, I'm just kidding. Well, we talked a little bit about this pass rush here, and I mentioned George Karlaftis, Carlos Dunlap, guys that can kind of disrupt in the passing lanes. Obviously, Chris Jones, I think, is about to have a fantastic postseason. I'm keeping an eye on Frank Clark still. That guy just has a knack for making some plays in January. He is 5th all time on the all-time sack list in the NFL. He is 1 sack from tying Reggie White.
He's getting it.
He's 1.5 sacks from tying, or he's 1.5 sacks from tying Chiefs great Terrell Suggs. I think Frank Clark might be able to give the Chiefs a little juice here. So I am going with Frank Clark for mine. Let's go to the predictions.
All right, I'll kick us off. This is going to be a closer game than I think Vegas has it. Right now, I believe the last I checked, the spread is 8.5 in the Chiefs' favor. I do think that the Chiefs are going to pull this out, but I think it's going to be a little bit back and forth. Doug Peterson is a hell of a coach, and Steve Spagnuolo puts together a hell of a game plan. I think those two are going to create a very, very epic battle on that side of the ball. I think Spagnuolo can win some early matchups there and try and come out with a really good game plan. Doug Peterson's going to counter. It's going to depend on what Spagnuolo can do after that. He's typically been good in the playoffs at countering again, taking things away. I think that's going to be the key matchup, especially when on the other side of the ball, Andy Reid's going to come out and going to have a very effective offense. I think that they're going to move the ball. They're going to put points on the board. It's just going to depend how many stops can the Chiefs defense get? Is it going to be 1 in the 3 that they're going to allow a touchdown like they have been? Or is it going to be 2 and 3, making this game a lot closer than it needs to be? So I'm going the Chiefs winning this one in a little bit more of a high scoring affair. I got them winning this one 31-27.
Woo! I love when we do these because this is something we have an outline. I don't ever put scores in there, and Craig always goes first. And I would say 90% of the time we share a score prediction on at least one of the scores, right? At least one of them is the exact same number. And we're going to get there in a second. I think the Jaguars are going to be riding high off of what just happened for the Chargers game. I think you listen to them talk, you look at their fan base. They are very, very confident right now. They played great down the stretch. They got punched square in the mouth numerous times, and they still came back and won that game. I think they're riding high. I think it's going to be a little interesting for them. Sounds like the weather's going to be kind of bad in Kansas City. That's probably not great when you're a team that plays in a stadium that has a pool in it year round. I don't know. Just going to have to lob that out there into the world.
It was 42 degrees, and there were still people in the pool last week. Shout out to
we'll
this.
see if
That's
they get in the pool in the freezing rain. So anyway, they're coming out here. I think they're going to start the game with a lot of energy. I don't think the Chiefs are necessarily going to come out flat like we have seen them occasionally do in the past, but I don't think they're going to match the Jaguars' energy off the rip. I think the Jags are going to come out. They're going to be flying around. They're going to be hitting. And for your scripted plays, maybe even the first quarter, it's going to look really tight. It's going to look like it's going to be this close game because Doug Peterson's going to have them rolling. Second quarter, going into halftime, coming out of halftime, I think the Chiefs, better talent. They're just superior talent, superior quarterback play, better defensive coordinator, more ways to win on both sides of the ball are just going to start to take over. The Chiefs are going to slowly start to pull away. It's going to kind of start looking like what you would expect a 1 seed looking like in this situation. I think by the end of the game, you're like, yeah, the Chiefs were definitely the better team. This is why they were always a Super Bowl favorite this year round. I think this is going to end up being a, we're reminding you kind of game. I just don't know if it'll look like that from the get-go. I have the Chiefs winning this one 31-20. So a comfortable, 2-score lead here, two scores, 31-20.
I've seen this team, I think we thought that, the Chiefs might press a little bit. They might, be a little bit anxious and tense in week 18 because this is their pursuit of the 1 seed. The Raiders are flying high coming off of beating the San Francisco 49ers. I'm not about to equate week 18 against the Raiders to the playoff game. But what I did see from that football game was from the Chiefs specifically was just the most workmanlike focused performance that we've seen from this team for a long stretch of football. And you heard the message from the locker room coming out of that game from Patrick Mahomes. Hey, take this week to get better. There's some level of focus. And I think the shift has occurred in that locker room where, yes, Patrick Mahomes has always been that dude, but this is Patrick Mahomes' team unequivocally in a way that it's never been before because veterans are gone. This is a very young core of players that is kind of coming into the NFL under the leadership of Patrick LaVon Mahomes. And I have this weird feeling that the Chiefs are going to beat the brakes off the Jacksonville Jaguars. Where it's coming next week. Don't worry. It's not coming this week. I don't think.
They better win.
They better win. They are winning.
Rant will happen. Yeah.
Rant's coming out now, Craig, because they are winning the football game. But I genuinely feel like there's just something bubbling here where this team's going to come out. They understand, they know what the intensity of a divisional round football game looks like because there is a core of players that have been there. The leader of this football team, the leaders of this football team have been through this 4 straight times where they've come out of it victorious. They know what to expect in this game. The Jacksonville Jaguars do not. They have no clue what's about to hit them. Trevor Lawrence has no clue how loud Arrowhead can be in January. And I think the moment is going to be too big for this young football team that's flying high, that's riding with some confidence. Well, young teams like them, they climb the mountaintop. They take a big step forward, and then they fall flat on their face. Well, it's Jacksonville's turn to fall flat on their face. The Chiefs are coming in. They know what they're going to do. They know what this game's about, and they're going to come in, and they're going to smack the 9-8 regular season Jacksonville Jaguars 37-20. They are doubling the spread, and hopefully they're hosting an AFC championship game in Arrowhead, but they're hosting somebody, and it's going to be somewhere